Procurementum, on the other side, means to acquire something by using someone in an unfair way, right? So basically, the fundamental definition of procurement is two bad things. You're either forcing someone or you're using someone. And so as this thing grew into a profession in the early, 1500s, 1600s, procurement was primarily an administrative function, and it was taken care of either by the clergy in the church on behalf of the king, or it was done by some of the king's guards. And all graduated a little bit because this was the industrial age. And so it meant that you needed procurement professionals to do things like negotiate on behalf of the organization. You needed them to plan for demand for the inputs that you're putting into your manufacturing. So they moved from being a purely administrative function to being a function that was non-strategic. I'd let you carry there. But it was a value driver. So it wasn't sitting at any kind of table. It wasn't contributing in terms of the more senior level conversations within the industrial age, but it was present. And now. And this is basically, the period of the 20th century. We start to understand that in order for us to optimize our organizations, there is a central function that does a lot of the work through which most of the information in our organizations flow. And we need to ask that function a couple of questions before we make decisions, right? So we accommodate procurement as a strategic driver to a certain extent, but it doesn't wield any power. So it's almost as if people recognize the importance of procurement. They recognize the importance of the information that's held by procurement, but they don't recognize that procurement ought to be a function that actually has any power. So that's the general evolution of procurement from the 1600s. But the most interesting thing is from the procurem plus procuramentum age, we haven't been able to shake this negative perception that in procurement, if you're not doing something wrong, you are about to do something wrong, right? That is a perception we haven't been able to shake since the early 1500s. So then, with that context in mind, the next question is, what happened to our seat? Why is there no seat in the boardroom that's dedicated to procurement? If organizations understand that the information we hold is valuable, why aren't they inviting us into strategic sessions to help them guide the future of organizations? So, for example, procurement is the one function within an organization that has a unique interface with the customers, a unique interface with the suppliers, a unique interface internally with HR, with finance, with IT, with absolutely every single function. And so the information that flows through procurement is more than information that flows through any other function within the organization. So we are basically sitting on a data bank of information. We have the bank. Why is no one inviting us into the party? For one, they just don't like us. I have three things I'm going to say about what happened to our seat at the table, or why we don't have a seat at the table, I believe. Please feel free to tell me I'm crazy if you think that I am. The first one is procurement and procurement professionals are notoriously unable to communicate the value they contribute to organizations. And there's something that was said this morning about how you need to communicate. So what we do within procurement is similar to what lawyers do, right? When we talk to cross-functional collaborators, we talk at them in procurement language. So I want to tell you about all the KPIs that I am achieving. I want to tell you about OTIF receiving, OTIF issuing, value delivery, cost optimization. I want to tell you all these nice sounding terms that on the face of them don't mean anything to anyone except for procurement, right? And that is the problem because there is a massive disconnect between what we are saying and what the organization is hearing. So the first and foremost role of procurement professionals is to learn how to speak to the organization in a way that the organization can understand. And that's about narrative control. I have a very interesting quote there. I haven't shown it to you guys. Um, Value is not what you say it is. Value is what your customer believes it is. So you could go to your CFO every day and tell him that I'm saving you 1% on this margin and 3% on this margin and 4% on this margin. But if you're not able to communicate that in a way that says, listen, as a procurement function, here's how we are impacting the triple bottom line, right? From a profit point of view, we are helping you increase revenue. So when you do your TP and L, more money is coming into the organization because you can account for that saving as an income. From a people point of view, we are building strong collaborative relationships with suppliers. So in terms of the brand of the organization is viewed as valuable within the communities. So we need to learn to say the things to our collaborators that they understand and stop speaking at them about OTIF receiving and OTIF issuing, which honestly no one except your procurement manager or your supply chain manager cares about. So what's the second thing, if I can find it? We're still on the first thing. My apologies. This thing is dribbling me now, right? These are three examples of instances in the past where procurement departments have done amazing work, but haven't been able to communicate that value to the organization in a way that the organization understood. And so, therefore, the value they contributed was attributed to someone else. We spoke a bit about Toyota this morning, right? Toyota basically revolutionized manufacturing with their just in time methodology. They said, listen, we're spending way too much money on storage. And then at the end of the financial year, we have to account for closing stock. It doesn't make sense from a profitability point of view. So let's move to a system where the parts that we need to use in a certain period arrive just before that period, right? Just in time. And this was something that was led by the procurement resources within the organization. And then they added to that Kaizen, the idea of continuous improvement, right? Now, whenever we think Toyota and we think just in time, we attribute that either to Toyota as a brand or we attribute it to manufacturing excellence, which is an operations role. At no point in the conversation do we ever mention the contribution that procurement made to developing one of the foremost strategies for manufacturing excellence today. That is a problem because it's a lost opportunity. That's example one. And there are millions of them. I'm going to keep you here till I'm done. Number two, Unilever. Um, those of you who've worked in the FMCG space understand that speed and margins are key. So you need to do things fast in terms of your responsiveness to the market, but you also, like any 1 rand on top of what your cost is, can decimate the business. So what the team at Unilever did is they developed a cost management system that helped them excel through periods where volatile prices were through the roof. So in terms of whether they were buying finished products and rebranding them, or whether they were manufacturing products and branding them that way, they were able to optimize costs. And how did they do it? By building strategic relationships with suppliers. Who was building those relationships? Your supply chain and procurement professionals. When we look at the Unilever financial reports and we see these massive profits that are declared, who do we attribute that profit to? We attribute it to sales, we attribute it to marketing, and we attribute it to finance. Because sales actually sells the customer, marketing makes the customer aware, and finance makes the books make sense. Those are the three sort of departments that we look at when we're trying to attribute value. Not procurement, not supply chain, who actually came up with the system that helped the organization derive value. The last one is Siemens. And look, I love Siemens, but also Siemens is a problem to talk about because of their bribery issues in the east and the west of Africa there. But let's forget about all of that and just talk about their sustainable procurement, right? So Siemens decided that they wanted to be more aggressive in terms of their sustainability responsibility because they wanted to start reporting on sustainability long before reporting on sustainability was popular. So by the time we all started walking around saying ESG, 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 Siemens had laid the foundation for things like that to be possible. So what Siemens did is they went to their key strategic partners and they said, we will help you with a funding model within the supply chain that helps you continue to be profitable even though you are sourcing and executing on our behalf in a more sustainable way, right? Turns out at the end of the day, Siemens didn't lose any money and they ended up with a very, very sustainable supply chain. But when an organization like that is successful in attaining those goals, who do we say thank you to? The CEO. And no one ever mentions procurement or supply chain. So this is just three examples on a massive multi-billion-dollar scale where supply chain leadership has failed to say, look at all the work we are doing in a way that their cross collaborators understand so that they can place the same amount of value on the work being done. That's just number one. We're going to be here for a while. So what's the second thing that I think procurement resources are failing at doing? And I'm very passionate about this one. If you call any of the companies I've worked for in the past, they'll tell you one of my favorite words was no, or it's not possible, right? Because what tends to happen in procurement is Vusi will pop into my office and say, Solofel, I need 5,000 shirts tomorrow because the board is arriving. We want to gift them and their family and their family's family. And so when you accept to do that within the timeline it has been requested from you, you accept the responsibility of delivery. So when Vusi turns around and he says, Solofelo, you didn't deliver on what we agreed on, he's actually right. We need strong enough procurement leadership that's able to say, listen, I would love to help you. This is just not possible right now. Let's explore alternative options, right? And come up with a potential solution if a solution is available. If it isn't, because we are not Superman, except for me, if a potential solution or alternative solution isn't available, then just that one time, it's not going to be possible to execute. You are not going to be able to execute on absolutely everything, absolutely every single time, in absolutely every single way you're being asked to do it. So it's important to be able to set those boundaries. Again, Mr. Quotation, I have a very interesting quote to go with this. And it is, you are not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Right? I'm not going to add on that because it's so amazing. Okay, let's go to the third thing that I think procurement professionals aren't doing well at all. Oh, actually, examples. I keep skipping these, but these are so important for our context. So there are three examples I'm going to talk about. Boeing 737 MAX crisis. A couple of years ago, a bunch of Boeing planes just started crashing, right? It was weird. It was a massive anomaly in terms of when we understand, in terms of the period, when we understand plane crashes to happen. So there was a massive investigation that was undertaken. And what they discovered is there had been a massive cost-cutting agenda within the organization, which meant that there was an emphasis placed on appointing suppliers who were cheaper, often delivering lower quality products. And that, because as a supply chain contributor to the manufacturing process, affected the quality of the Boeing planes that Boeing was delivering to their customers. So, there's a lot of debate that can be had about who was wrong in this situation. I think a number of people were wrong, but I think supply chain or procurement, at the point at which you appoint a supplier who you know is not qualified or capable to deliver at the level they need to deliver, especially when you have people's lives in your hands, it becomes your responsibility to have said, again, no, guys, it's not possible just this one time. And if they fire you, you can come live in my house. We'll share a loaf of bread. We'll find you another job. But I think it's really important for us to be able to delineate and set those boundaries. The second one is a heart-wrenching thing that happened with BP, which was the Deep Horizon scandal. Millions and millions of cubic liters of oil spilt into the ocean, which then, affected the fish, affected the livelihoods of the communities around the oil rig. And there were hundreds of thousands of people that needed to be moved. So they were displaced from their homes, and there was there were a lot of animals that died. It was just, look, it was a horrible mess. I think BP ended up paying a couple of billion to the families of those who had lost their lives and people who had lost their livelihoods. What happened leading up to the Deep Horizon oil spill? Uh, a supply chain procurement, again, went out to build strategic partnerships with contractors who they knew were not qualified to execute at the level they needed to do. So, for example, a minimum of working at heights is you need to have a working at heights certificate, right? They were appointing people who did not meet those minimum thresholds. And because of that, one thing led to another, led to another. There was an oil spill, and hundreds of thousands of lives were lost. Again, who's doing the appointment? Who's finding the supplier? Who is endorsing a bad request? That is procurement. And then last, Volkswagen and their emission scandal. This was big news a couple of years ago. It was all over the media. They seemingly put in a device in the measurement of the emissions that was altering the readings to make them seem that they were more green than they actually were. It came out, I think, a year after the scandal broke, that it was a procurement-led decision to appoint the supplier of the device that they fitted into the vehicles, right? So there was nothing wrong with the device. The quality of the device is what was altering the readings. So it's not as if Volkswagen went out and said, we are deliberately going to make sure that we, measure our emissions wrong. Again, a procurement-led decision that leads to a lot of loss for the company, a lot of brand damage, and just like all round terrible situation for everyone. Three good examples of how not setting boundaries leads to catastrophic circumstances, and procurement at the end of the day is who gets held accountable, as they should. So what's the third thing I want to talk about? I think we touched on this a little bit in our panel discussion earlier on, right? The idea of the quality of leadership that we have leading procurement functions. I've been really fortunate in my very, very, very long life to have engaged with quite a number of senior level procurement and supply chain leaders across the globe. And there seems to be, you could almost, if you were to draw a line down the middle, if you go to the Greenwich Meridian and you draw a line with Africa on the left, the rest of the world on the right, and then you went to the equator and you drew a line with countries above the equator at the top of it, it seems almost uniquely that procurement leaders in sub-Saharan Africa don't understand the role they need to play as leaders first and foremost within the organizations they lead. So, for example, when I first joined Anglo many, many years ago, um, I was given an induction by the head of supply chain who sat in London at the time. And in that induction, the very first thing he shared with me was what his vision for procurement and supply chain for the organization was for the next 5 years. So he started the conversation by saying, Solo, he didn't pronounce my name as well as I did. Um, Here are the things that I want to achieve within this function for the next 5 years. Already before we have any other discussion, I have an alignment, an understanding of who I'm dealing with and what it is they want, right? Within our context, our leaders are too busy running around next to us, putting out the fires that we are putting out, which isn't the role of leadership, right? If you are, I had this conversation with someone in the audience. If you are a CEO and you are vested in sitting in on bid evaluations around PPE, or even if it's a capital project, you are misplaced. You are in the wrong place. Get out of that room immediately, because you need to be playing more of a strategic role, number one, in collaborating with the rest of the organization, understanding what the organizational needs are, and figuring out how you can communicate the value that you derive from your team to the rest of the organization, right? Nice little quote I have there, pretty long one. The very essence of leadership is that you have to have a vision. It's got to be a vision you articulate clearly. I'll just add there, frequently and forcefully on every occasion. You can't blow an uncertain trumpet. It's incredibly difficult as a junior resource to work for someone whose vision you don't understand, or to work for someone who doesn't have a vision. Because whenever difficult situations arise, that person will chop and change. The goalposts will shift depending on what's convenient. Um, One of the things I used to do with my team is I'd say, okay, guys, so I've been given a DOA of X. That means up to this amount I need to approve. So over your DOA between, me and the CEO, this is where I approve, right? But I said, in terms of the lower half of my DOA, I'm not going to do any of the legwork. You guys are going to do the legwork. I will look at it and I will approve, but the legwork is done for you. That is such an empowering thing, to take a junior resource who is now evaluating tenders for 8, 10, 15, 20 million, whereas the organizational DOA is 2. As long as they don't need my signature, sometimes even if they do need my signature, as long as I'm keeping my job, as long as I'm doing all of these things, I'm okay with it. Because as a leader, you don't have the backbone to stand for your convictions, stand for what you believe in, and stand in a manner that defends and sets an example for your team. That's the one thing that led to state capture. procurement leaders who said, okay, I'll do it. Even if they said, I'll do it just this one time, and then did it again, and then again, and then again. Um, that is the one fundamental thread across all state capture related issues that had to do with procurement. The leaders who did stand up and say, no, I'm not going to do it, those leaders were victimized, you know, and it's unfair. The lady from AXA was talking about how, when she said no and they kind of pushed her out, she had a bond to pay. She had a house, she had kids who needed to go to school, and it was a very, very difficult period in her life. But she was vindicated because she could have said yes and she'd be sitting in prison right now, or she could have died under mysterious circumstances, like some people we know. So it's really important as a leader. And it's okay for you to say, "Hi guys, I'm not the kind of leader who's going to take make that sacrifice." No, it's tough out there. But so remember the statistics we talked about. It's just that I left my book on the table. I'd written down five different countries and how much in dollar value passes through public procurement. What I do remember is annually the amount of money that passes through public procurement in South Africa is 50 billion US dollars. In Kenya, it's 8 billion US dollars. In Ghana, it's 20 billion US dollars, right? If you cut out 100 million of that, or 288 million, like happened in the Free State, what you are doing is you are impacting two or three generations of people who are coming after you. So it looks like you are just protecting your job, and you have the right to do that from a point of view of self actualization. But the consequences of your decisions are a lot far reaching than we are ever willing to contend with. So again, it's an internal ethical debate. Um, I have a little boy now who helps me see the world completely differently. Some of the convictions I thought I had a few years ago, I realize I don't have them as strongly, because you have responsibilities, right? But you need to decide who are you as a person, and you need to live that consistently. That's state capture. Target, one of the biggest supermarket chains in the United States, decided they wanted to break into the Canadian market. So they very quickly, very aggressively opened 138 stores between 2013 and 2015. One of the craziest visions for an expansion plan in human history, right? And because they hadn't factored in um, the procurement and supply chain consequences of operating in the north of America, they ended up completely having to exit the Canadian market, right? Again, that's leadership and vision. Remember when we're talking about strategic value delivery, we said one of the things you need to have is foresight. A core aspect of foresight is being able to do a simple risk matrix, right? If I move X from Y to B, what are the things I'm likely to face? So that was a combination of a lack of strong leadership, but also a lack of visionary leadership. So we need to have a strong vision. And then lastly, KFC's supply chain failures in the UK. They decided they wanted to reboot and re-radicalize the entire supply chain. They changed a bunch of core strategic suppliers, and that didn't pay off. Again, that was a push from business more than it was a push from procurement, but procurement endorsed and allowed some. work under you are inspired by you, look up to you, trust you, and are empowered by you. Those are the responsibilities you have. If you're not doing nothing, pull out a book, imagine some things that you can do, because that's something that needs to change. How you help people stay in an organization is you create a system of value around them. So you don't have to always pay for their MBAs. You don't always have to pay for their housing allowance or car allowance, although it would be nice. What you have to do is you have to show them that they are valued within their organization. So if you look at the South African and Botswana market, for example, two of the leading brands in terms of companies that people want to work for is First National Bank and Discovery, because the environment that they create internally allows you to be an effective employee, but also allows you to do things that are valuable to you. So if I need to knock off at 1 o'clock to go pick up my daughter from school, and I'll log in again to a meeting at 2:30, and there's an organization that allows me to do that, as long as I work the additional 30 minutes at the end of the day, that is something that people value in the modern economy. So you need to create a system of value around young talent, especially in a profession where people don't wake up in the morning and say, I want to study procurement, or I want to study, supply chain. Most of us in this room were found by supply chain. We weren't even looking. It just came knocking on our doors. Um, I like to tell my story. When I graduated high school a couple of 100 years ago, I wanted to study to be an actuary. And I went to my dad and I said, hey, listen, there's this amazing course at UCT, actuarial sciences. And because I was in Botswana at the time, UCT was requiring Botswana students to do a bridging course. I was like, I have to do, a bridging course for a year, and then I can do this thing. And he said to me, listen, you see these acting sciences of yours, I don't know what they are, but you are going to study law. All right. And so that's how I ended up in law. And so I studied it with a very rebellious attitude. I hated it. I hated law. When I graduated, I literally said, hey, old man, here's your degree. I'm going to go ruin my life somewhere else. And I found, well, procurement found me. My very first role was as an inventory clerk. And I was that annoying person who'd run into the manager's office every day with a new solution about how to solve an unexisting problem. But it said to me that I was passionate about what I was doing. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the solution mapping. I enjoyed the numbers. And so I stuck with procurement all throughout my career. But if I had had the kind of manager back then who every time I knocked on his door was busy or never gave me the time of day, I wouldn't have enjoyed it. I wouldn't have been found by procurement, and I probably would be one of those criminal lawyers somewhere helping you arrest guys who've snatched bags. That my life could have turned out that way. Instead, I'm living a very purpose-driven, passionate life about what it is that I do. And that could be a similar story to a lot of people in this room, but we need leaders who enable us to enjoy the profession that we've chosen. That's number one. Number two, narrative control and effective communication, right? And effective communication is the most, guys, it's the most important thing. Um, we used to have a running joke with my friends that, you know what, if you don't want to hire us, don't invite us to the interview. Because if you let us in that interview room, we are walking out of there with a job. And that was a backing that we placed on our ability to be able to communicate our ideas. We don't always have the best ideas in the room, but whatever little ideas we do have, we're able to communicate. And if I ever, overhear your idea in the grapevine and I communicate it before you, it becomes mine. That's my idea now, right? And that's the kind of value you need to create within your organizations. You need to enable young people, whether through Toastmasters or public speaking training or presentation skills training, the soft skill side of our profession. You need to build an enabling environment around that. That's communication. Narrative control is what we spent the first, I think, 10 minutes of my presentation talking about. Being able to control the narrative around what do you do? And even when negative things happen, being able to control the narrative around whose fault is it and why, but also what is the solution to make sure that we get out of this negative place that we're in. That's the second thing. Well, that's the second two things. And then the third thing is research, advanced data analytics, and thought leadership. Ronald and I, we talk to a lot of procurement professionals. And when someone doesn't know what they're talking about, within the first 2 minutes, you know they don't know what they're talking about. Because we live in an age where information is so readily available. You literally need to read one article, which is 3 to 5 minutes every morning before you touch anything else. By the end of the year, you've read 365 articles, which means you have 365 knowledge touch points that you can discuss with another person. And through those 365 conversations, if you discuss it with two people, you have 730 responses to the knowledge points you've contributed. So the person you are at the end of 1 year, just by reading one article a day, is worlds apart from the person you are if you don't read. So it's really, really important that from a research point of view, you understand your profession, you understand what's coming, you understand what the past is, you understand what the main challenges are, and you start to build solutions around those challenges. One of the things I like to do is I'll just look at, okay, what are guys in Australia or the States doing, right? And there's an Australian company called, I don't want to mispronounce their name, but it's Xenin, I think it is. And they have built a DA tool, data analytics tool, that you can input data into, and it will give you the most accurate strategic advice that any human being could give you. So you can input over the past 10 years geopolitical data. Where have where has political unrest been? Where has social unrest been? Which country has fought with who? What has what president said about who? You can input weather data. So what have the weather patterns been over the last 10 years? You can input sales data, supplier sales data, or supplier finance data. When you put this into this tool, on the other end, it tells you if you want to buy a container, don't buy a container from North America for the next 2 years, no matter what, right? And you understand from an information point of view that although looking at the 2 years of data that we have with our human minds and our human eyes, this thing tells us that this is the wrong decision. So, looking at things like that are coming and that are completely revolutionizing the world we live in today. One of the things I've had sleepless nights over is capacity building and what that looks like for the future. There's some kids in SA who've developed an Invigilator app. And this Invigilator app, within the space of 2 years, took half of the business away from Moodle and Blackboard because you no longer needed your education systems to be on a central intranet. Your education system was on your phone. You could do exams on your phone looking into the camera, right? These are the kind of advances that are happening, and we need to figure out where do I fit into this picture and how do those advances relate to the work that I do within procurement? And then thought leadership. Once we've attained knowledge, we need to share it. We need to write articles. We need to shoot videos. We need to attend conferences and symposiums. We need to touch base with other professionals within our industry. Because when we die and we die with our knowledge, that is a waste of the knowledge that we hold. So it's important that as constant as we are able, we share information with any single person you come across. I'm sure my friends who aren't in supply chain are very, very annoyed by me because I'm constantly trying to raise a supply chain topic with them, right? But that's who you need to be in your circle because if you're passionate about sharing knowledge, it translates to all the other aspects of your life. And then finally, what are some of the core values we need to have? I'm not going to go into these in any detail because I don't think I'm going to be able to do the definitions justice. We all have a general understanding of what these things mean, but we have a general understanding of what they mean to the public. The conversation we need to have when we leave here today is what do these things mean to you, right? So for me, what does honesty mean? It means telling the truth absolutely every single time, but it means understanding the timing of when I tell truths, right? I'm not always going to tell you the truth immediately, but I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to wait for the right enabling environment. That means the truth that I tell you will be received in the way that I intend it without offending you. So, for example, if you are a break dancer or a singer and you invite me to a concert where you are breakdancing or singing, and you jump off the stage excited and you ask me, "Oh my God, how was it?" I'm not going to say it was terrible, right? I'm going to say, "Hey, the concert is really good." A couple of weeks down the line, my friend, don't change your career, right? Because the truth I give you 3 weeks down the line will be received differently from the truth I give you when you're excited and jumping off the stage. So that's really, really important. Figure out what each of these core values mean to you as an individual and then live those values consistently. Last, definitely not least, easy questions only, if we do have time. Anyone with a question? Or are we going straight into the panel discussion? Okay, great. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you all.
Thank you, Tsolofelo. You can come and have a seat at the table. And Miss Nomahlubi, you may also come and have a seat. Mr. Ronald, Mr. Bongani, and Mr. Warren Dlamini. While you are coming up front, I was reading an American City newsletter about procurement having a seat at the table. There were two gentlemen that they were writing about here. One works for a firm where the procurement department is under the finance department. Then the other firm is a standalone department. Then one is saying it comes down to a matter of perspective. It depends who the bosses are, whether it's the mayor, the legislatures, the governors, city councilmen, boards of supervisors or finance people. Do they see the value in public procurement? It's up to your profession, in your case, to do a better job of telling your story so that you can explain to people why procurement is important. Then the other is saying it won't be handed to you easily. Procurement professionals need to justify this autonomy and earn their voice. If procurement people want to be viewed as professionals in the workplace, you have to be willing to deliver more value to the organization than that of a clerk or that of a process monitor. Is it about having a seat at the table or having a greater relationship with the CFO? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linton. And I think the biggest appreciation, of course, goes to Tulu, I hope. I'm not sure for my employer who failed to pronounce your name. And I always find it fascinating, the story of Botswana. I recently worked with a guy, and, he comes into the boardroom and introduces himself. He says, my name is Macheng Macheng. And we're all waiting to hear his surname. And the guy is done. So yeah, we're getting used to it. And I was wondering, Guti, is it a case of laziness or what? But yeah, a big appreciation to all the speakers. I think really, thank you, Mr. Matabula and team. Sometimes you attend these workshops and conferences, and you really find the speakers wanting. You are not sure if these guys really prepare. Do they know what they are talking about? And of course, like Tulu was saying, in your first 2 minutes of interaction, you can already tell that we are in for a big game here. But we do want to appreciate that you know your craft, you understand the dynamics in the industry, and also you've prepared for the session, so we do appreciate that. Mine is simple. I'm just moderating, so we are going to continue. We're going to continue having this conversation, and we are essentially saying, what does it take for us in this room to move into the C-suite? And I'm Nomahlubi Matiwane, and I do want to correct the assertion that was placed by the program director here, who said that I was long gone when he joined. It says nothing about my age, please. I started as an intern at Eswatini Water Services. Yesterday was my birthday, and I turned a year younger, so I'm quite young, you know. But I think across all professions, really the standard is really clear. It doesn't change depending on professions to say what is required for anyone to move into the C-suite. And I think all speakers that have given a presentation here have highlighted the issue of the need for being a strategic individual. Strategic in how you approach the work, but also strategic in the understanding of the business where you are placed. Tulu was talking of foresight. So we talk of the now and we talk of the future. Leadership capacity, of course, is also part of that. Did I miss something? Oh, okay. And then talent is also one of the issues that came up. So it doesn't matter what you do at all times. I think it's important that you make sure that you are talent at the work where you're placed. And talent does not depend on your supervisor. It's also how you place yourself, how you show up in the workplace. And the oldest way, you know, to do these assessments, you know, they will typically look at how are you performing where you are now. And if they use, for example, the 9-box grid, which looks at your performance, the verticals look at how you're performing, a score out of 3, and you happen to be maybe a 3. I'm performing well in what I'm doing. And then they also look at potential, because it's difficult to find a finished product, right? So what does potential talk to? It says, are you ready to do the job that maybe is a level above you? Are you agile? Do you have the capacity to learn? Do you have the professional humility that is required for continuous growth or continuous development? So, gentlemen, fully appreciating, I think, all these dynamics, because I'm saying the standard is clear. Those are the requirements that are needed for you to move into a C-suite, into the C-suite rather, whether you are in procurement, whether you are in customer experience, whether you are in operations. Essentially, that is what is required. And perhaps to start us off is the question is essentially, what skills should we have or aspire to have as we sit in this room to be considered? Having said what I have said, you know, but what skills? So I'm sitting here and, you know, I do aspire, well, what should I be doing now? And I think the answers have really been given. But let's try and summarize that so that when I go out of here, that is what I'm essentially chasing. So I do want to grow. What skills should I be chasing at this point? And I'll leave it open to whoever would want. I'll just be monitoring who hasn't spoken, don't worry.
Okay, maybe I can start. In answering the question, I would like us to probably to say, are we looking at skill at an individual level, or we are looking at a skill at a functional level? A skill at an individual level, we have individuals that have really demonstrated. They've moved up from the lowest in the procurement field right up to the highest in an organization. I think earlier on I made reference of Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple. Is a classic example. So from his individual skill, I think he has demonstrated that. At a corporate level, which skill do we need? We need more of the soft skills rather than the hard skills. The hard skills, yes, tell me about procurement, but now I don't want to hear about procurement. I want to hear about the business. Where is the business going? Where is the institution going? Where are we going? Do you understand that? Do you articulate that? But if you come in and then you start telling us about procurement, we want to hear about procurement. We want to hear about which are the things that are affecting service delivery. Do you understand them? How do you help my problem? As a CEO, there are things that worry me. Do you understand them? Just probably in closing, one of the key skills that I think as procurement, as a fraternity, we need to develop is the skill around lobbying. I like politicians. I wish I'll be a politician one day, but I'm still developing my skill to be a politician. I like politicians. They are very good at lobbying. They know how to lobby, and they know when to lobby. So positioning yourself to an extent that they miss you, that's lobbying. When, how to talk to the leaders. Don't come into the board meeting and talk about procurement, but come into the board meeting and talk about the things that affect the board members. I'll stop here for now.
I think I really appreciate that, Ronald, because I didn't want it coming from me to say that you really need to understand the business. If you do not understand the business, you are going to continue to operate in a vacuum. And there is no way you are going to move into the C-suite if you do not understand the business on the overall. And I know Ronald at some point said that people that sit at procurement understand the business. And I whispered in my corner, I was like, really? And I say this because they will still move into a management meeting that you will typically have every now and again. But we'll only speak when we are talking about the procurement plan. That is the only time they will raise their hand to start talking. When we're talking operations, they have nothing to say. When we're talking customer experience, they have nothing to say. When we're talking of the business intent on the overall, the strategy, they really have nothing to say. And you even sit up and say, and you plan, you know, technical will say, we want to build a reservoir in Babane in the next 12 months. And by the way, I do have my procurement people here, and I'm not saying it's you. I'm just giving an example. This applies across board. And they will accept that plan to say in the next 12 months, we are going to build a reservoir. Instead of saying, is that feasible? What does it take coming from procurement? I need 3 to 6 months, you know, for procurement. But they are in the room, you know. So I'm saying it does, and I appreciate that you have highlighted that, and I can see Tulu is itching to say something.
Yeah,
I
maybe just
actually
to
just
come
wanted
in.
to say, can Norma's procurement people stand up so we see you?
No.
Yeah, I think maybe just to try to, oh, by the way, the others have spoken. I'm Warren Dlamini, coming from the CPE. I think just to come into the issue around us being silent in the boardroom or silent in those meetings, I think it has to do with is the environment enabling, giving us the opportunity to talk? Is the environment allowing me to offer and say something different? Because in most cases, procurement, I've been procurement for 14 years now. So when we are doing procurement, sometimes you are always the scapegoat. And everyone is trying to look for someone to blame. They blame procurement. Now, if I come into a meeting and the environment is not conducive and is not enabling me to express myself, I will then keep quiet. But if the environment is enabling, I will be able to stand up and say, but this is not possible. In most organizations where I have worked, that has been allowed. we have had an opportunity to say, when they come and say, this is, we are doing this A, B, C, and D, then we'll stand up and say, but this is not possible. But it is possible. It goes back to what Tsolo was saying around the issue of setting boundaries, because the moment you accept something that you know you will not deliver, then you have messed up. And even the business will then lose confidence on you as a professional. But if you would say no, then propose an alternative and say, but I think it can be done in such and such a time, then you deliver. Then that brings confidence to everyone around you, and you build the trust that the business has to have. And now you are starting to put the value into the process, into the organization, because I think that is what is key that we need to do as procurement professionals. We need to bring value to the organization, not just only take the paycheck, but we must also bring value so that they can see the value. Like you were saying, they must miss us if we are not in those meetings. When they are doing their plans and we are not there, they must say, no, but we can't continue with the meeting if procurement is not there, because we are bringing something and we are bringing sense to what they are doing, because we know the timelines and we know what needs to be done in order for us to achieve the end goal.
Thank you very much, Nkosi Dlamini, and I think you did get a round of applause. So I take it people are operating in environments where they are not allowed to speak. But I think another dimension I would like to bring in is the understanding that all professionals are fighting to move into the C-suite. So it's really a war to make sure that your voice is heard around the table. Of course, you bring in issues that are really difficult to fix. It's a culture. It could be a culture issue from where you work. But I do want us to go out of here understanding that it will never be easy. You know, it will never be easy. But it's critical that you continuously position yourself to ensure that your voice is heard from where you are operating. I think, Tulu, I would want to perhaps, and all gentlemen, you talked about the importance of controlling the narrative, you know, the importance of communication. How can the professionals seated here today demonstrate their value to the broader organization?
Thanks, Oma. I think a wonderful question. And it links directly to what I did want to talk about, which is one of the first things you said. And I don't know if we all heard it, because I think in the time I've been here today, that for me is the most powerful thing that's been said today. Noma opened by saying, be talent. Right? Before anything else, you must be talent. And what does it mean to be talent? You don't just understand your environment, you understand everyone else's environment. So that speaks to your empathy. When engineering is under pressure and they need to deliver by the end of the week, you need to approach and engage with them from a point of empathy, because you understand things from their point of view. Being talent also means being a collaborator. That speaks to maturity, right? So again, in procurement, people will upset you. There is no ways you're going to go through a 3 or 5 year long career without being upset. What you have control over is how you respond to that being upset and what you do with it, not just to turn your back and walk away, but to continue to build a more collaborative relationship. I'm going to differ slightly with everyone in the room and with you as well. I apologize, because I think when you're married and your husband or your wife doesn't create an environment for you to speak, you don't just stop speaking, because then the relationship dies. And what you need to be most interested in safeguarding is the relationship. And I think through a long enough journey of being empathetic, showing the people who aren't allowing you to speak that you have their interests at heart as well, not just procurement interests, you begin to crack open the door that allows you to speak, or that gets you requested to speak in environments like that. So I think that's really important, being talent. So working on yourself and making sure that you, first and foremost, are a valuable contributor. So can I pick you up right now and take you into a meeting where we are unprepared and you are going to be able to contribute? If the answer is no, that's where the problem is.
Thank you very much. And I think also linked to that, linked to being talent, is also the case of finding. They call them professional sponsors. They call them mentors. And I think when you shared your story, to say that when you started out, one of your supervisors, I'll call him or her, brought you into the boardroom when you least expected it. But I don't know if we heard what he said before that. He said they had been working day and night. Are we the type that works day and night? Because that is only when I can sponsor you to say, you know what, you are equal to go ahead and make this presentation. It does call for a bit of some work from your end. You can't be an 8 to 5 and still expect that you will move to the C-suite. It calls for you going the extra mile. I think also another follow-up question maybe is around the strategies that we as professionals can use to build a strong personal brand in the places where we are. And I know Ronald talked about being professional. He talked about, and I'll quote you verbatim. He said projecting oneself in a way that demonstrates superior level of acquired knowledge, acquired skills and competence, and exemplary conduct. So how can we, as professionals here, build a strong brand within our companies?
Okay, maybe if I can come in. Thank you. I think it's all about self-development, as we have just stated. I think the other one that you've mentioned is find yourself a mentor, someone who will assist you climb up the ladder. Because the other thing is that I think we procurement professionals are so much reserved in such a way that we end up failing to approach even people who are outside the procurement profession, who mentor us into leadership roles. It need not necessarily be someone in the procurement profession. And the other thing I want to mention about the getting into the C-suite, I always get worried when we discuss this topic. I think we had a SIPS conference again in Jozi, where we discussed the same thing. I tend to get worried. Why are we so obsessed about C-suits? Procurement is not about being in the table. It's not about, if you want to get into the table, find your way into the table. That is what you need to do. It's not about the position, but it's about your ability to influence business operations. It's about your ability to have your voice heard in the organization that you're working for. If you keep being reserved, no one will notice you. And I'll mention again that even if it's time for restructuring in an organization, you find that they decide to elevate the procurement function or the procurement office into the C-suite level. They will go look for someone outside. The skills. In the boardroom, we are not discussing quotations. We are not discussing tendering. We are not discussing. We are looking at the business as a whole. We are conceptual thinkers. We are collaborators. We are people who have to understand the business. So I think a priority shouldn't be the obsession to be at the C-suite, but the priority should be self-development so that you can exuberate those qualities, leadership qualities, that will take you into the boardroom. Even if they ignore you at first, they will not ignore you for long. You will find yourself in there. Thank you.
He says, what is the obsession? Please go ahead.
Yeah, Ronald,
thank
sorry.
you so much.
Before you go on,
All
sorry.
right.
Ronald has an amazing story that he shares about IT professionals pre-Y2K that I think is so inspirational when talking about how a function can collectivize and elevate everyone. So I'm going to put you on the spot. If you can please share that story, I feel like it'll be such a valuable share for the audience.
Are you coming tomorrow? I'll talk about it tomorrow. Yeah, honestly, it's in my talk tomorrow, but it's about branding, but also being able to take advantage of a situation. So we need to be opportunistic as procurement people. Historically, procurement, we are not coming from a good background, historically. Now, I've been moved to procurement because I'm failing to do my job. Now, I'm saying now to the CFO, I want to advise you. And the CFO is saying, but wait a minute. We moved you from this role to that role because we're not able to do the work. What are you going to tell me? So that stigma, we need to undo that stigma. We may talk about qualifications and all this. We need to do away with this stigma. Now, who is going to do it? It's us. That's where the story comes in. Those who were working pre-2000, those who were working pre-2000, there was a bigger scare globally. 1999, what will happen at the turn of the century? If I had money in the bank, because the computers were designed just to remember 2 digits. 1999, there were 2 possibilities. Either it will go 100 years back, 1900, or it was going to comply. Now, a certain professor in the States in 1998, he sat down, IT administrators, get the narrative right. IT administrators. We are a higher level. We've got CFO, CPOs here. We've got heads of SCM. Then, I remember in my organization, we only had an IT administrator whose job was to make sure that there is access to internet, and we're using a cable. That was the job. But 1999 brought an opportunity to the IT fraternity. This professor then said, you guys, it's either you do it or you remain where you are. What did they do? They went out, they researched. My computer then, it had a Y2K, I don't know yours. Mine had a Y2K, which meant that it was 2000 what? Compliant. Now, a number of people canceled their travels because they were not sure whether planes were going to land. Or they were going to land on the runway or in the seas. Okay? People had money in the bank, they withdrew their monies. And we stayed there, some of us, okay, that 31 December, 11 o'clock at night, 11:30, 11:45, a minute to 12 o'clock, nothing happened. They delivered. Today, there's no organization that does not have a chief information officer. Today, there's no, so they never fought for the space. They delivered. Okay, they never fought for the space. Why are we fighting for it? Why are we fighting for the space? We need to focus on what is the opportunity right now. In my earlier presentation, I said every country in the world has identified public procurement as a vehicle for economic development. Every country, Africa, developing countries, and whatever. Who is being referred to? It's us. What are we doing about it? That's the question. If we can come together here and deliver, we don't need to toy in the space. All we need is to deliver. We have delivered. That's all we need.
Thank you very much, Ronald. You want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to add on the issue of the branding. I think that is where we are somehow lacking as professionals. I think you mentioned in your earlier introduction that when we are sitting in the meetings, we are not clued up on the processes and on the business. And I think that is the area where we all need to improve and make sure that we gather as much knowledge as we can. And I think the biggest part that we need to assist us is to equip ourselves and understand the business and understand your input. How is it affecting the next person in line? Because I think that is where we work. If you have worked in a manufacturing environment, you will understand that by me ordering ingredients late, it means the production line will not work. And by so doing, once you understand that, then you will know exactly what you need to do. Then you will start understanding the business. Then from there, you become a good communicator. We must strive to be good communicators within the business. Share information, even if they have not requested it to you. Share the information, flood the relevant people with information, so that then you add the value, you advise the business way in advance. Sometimes I think what makes us not to be recognized is that we are always laid back, waiting for someone to come to us with a request for a quotation. Can you buy this for me? But instead of us being proactive, going to the business saying, I see you have budgeted for A, B, C, and D. When do you want it? When do you want it to be delivered? Then from there, you are now, the business is seeing, oh, okay, we have something here and which we can work with. I think for us, we need just to wake up from our slumber, make sure that we interact within the business and they see the value that we bring and we deliver. Because in most cases, I have made a point here to say, in most cases, for us, we are so focused on compliance more than being an enabler. I have developed a new system to say, as a procurement professional, I'm more of an enabler to the business than to be a compliance police. In most cases, we find ourselves being always looking for compliance. Yes, compliance is important, but yes, it has been messed up now. How do we move forward? How do we now try to address the issue? Then let us enable the business to perform, because at the end of the day, if we do that, then the triple bottom line will then show, because we have done our part. We must know the business, we must know our story, we must know the market, because in most cases you'll find the time you get the information, that is the only time you're scratching your head. Where am I getting this? Because we are not prepared.
Thank you very much. I do want to also just open up to the floor. If there's anyone with a burning question that I might miss, please feel free. I think I see a microphone and I want to risk and say iyakhona ku Rover. So if you want to pose a question, please feel free. But as we talk about it, I think he says, why do we really why are we fighting, let me say, to get to the C-suite? And I don't know in other countries, but I think in our context, growth is understood to be going up the ladder than lateral, growth. And I want to bring the issue of lateral growth from the perspective of learning to understand the business. So where I work, we do what we call job rotations. So if you want to learn about a specific department, you actually ask your supervisor to say, out of 8 hours of my day, can I spend my half day working in procurement because I want to understand procurement, working in customer experience? My duties will not, or my deliverables will not suffer because of that. I'll still make sure I deliver, but I'd also want to understand that. And I believe it helps you have a better understanding of the business. Do we think it's critical? Is it something that we are open to in terms of helping us, understand other segments of the business?
Yeah, look, it's absolutely vital. It's bad when I close my diary. Because there is nothing as painful as missing out on an opportunity because you weren't ready for that opportunity when it arrived, right? I was sharing with some colleagues on the way to lunch something that's called the fallacy of action. And it links to what Ronald was talking about us having an opportunity right now. The fallacy of action is basically that leaders will oftentimes give you half a solution, watch you fail, and then say, I can't do anything else for you. I gave you a solution and you failed. So the consequences of us not doing what the IT guys did in 1999 is this chance will be gone for good, right? But we can't want to do it just for vertical growth and upward mobility. We need to want to do it because we believe in the work that we're doing. And if you believe in the work that you're doing, you want to know as much as possible about the work that you're doing, right? So, I mean, you guys are in Eswatini. You're completely surrounded by South Africa. If you
Not completely.
well, not completely. There's a con. And that means a majority of your goods coming in, like many countries in SADC, come in through the port in Durban or the port in PE, one of the ports. How many people in here understand end to end what the challenge was with Transnet last year when there was a block at the port? Hands? That is a problem because we don't understand the environments we are operating in. That is something that intimately affects your ability to do your job. And it's not required when you get to work for you to know that thing. But in order for you to excel over and above the people next to you, it is required that you have an understanding of it. So lateral growth and vertical growth need to happen almost at a diagonal. As you are growing vertically, you need to be growing laterally as well. So let's hope it doesn't bell curve, but yeah.
Thank you very much. I think another issue that I'd like us to talk to is you talked about.
I needed
to say something, please, by all means.
Yeah, job rotation is the right concept. It helps us to move away from being silo to being transdisciplinary. Silo, we tend to defend our space at the expense of the business because we are not confident enough to articulate and to know what is happening. So job rotation gives us a bird's eye view in terms of what are the critical aspects that are needed. But again, job rotation helps on individual growth and positioning, but not functional positioning. Like I said earlier on, there are a lot of people that have developed from being procurement clerks or whatever it is into CEOs. There are a lot of them, but the function is still struggling. So it means if you are rotating at an individual level, it is the right thing for you. But for the profession, for the function, let's create chaos in our organizations. And let's see if they will call out our names. There is a chaos in the organization. Are they going to call SCM to come and fix it? If they don't call you, they know that they can live without you. There's this word, you can write and Google it if you want. It's called ingratiation. How do you have somebody to talk well about you in your absence? Ingratiation. How do you have someone to talk well about you in your absence? We always talk well about people at their funerals. That's when we talk well about them. But when they are alive, rarely. Now, SCM and procurement, are people talking well about us? We are here, are they missing us? Or it's good riddance? Procurement people are not here, let's quickly do this. By the time they come back, we are done. Are they missing us? So those are the issues at functional level that I'm saying. We need to start now honestly confronting them and see whether we are there. At individual level, I think we are there. But at functional, I don't think so.
Thank you, Ronald. I think
So-
you're a big advocate of the profession.
Maybe just to add another dimension on that, job rotation, yes, is good, as Ronald has just explained. But I like to say that job rotation needs formal structures. You need to have policies in place. You need to engage the unions and the like for a policy to go through. Before the job rotation policy is passed in your organization, I'll go back to what I said earlier on. Involve yourself. Be assertive. If you are not invited in those meetings, try to invite yourself and see if they'll turn you back. Those are some of the skills that you need to get into the C-suite, and those are the softer skills. Be assertive, be someone who wants to get things done, be someone who wants to understand the business. And you will not transition from being a transactional leader into a strategic leader if you lack those softer skills. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. Oh, okay. Please go ahead.
The mic is coming.
Everything's on. Okay. I think maybe my first question is okay, or perhaps a concern is most of us here are in public procurement. I think public procurement, the behavior of public procurement, is different from just when it's a purely a corporate where you can do as you please. Well, like it's too capitalistic. I think what we need to perhaps first understand is that the law we are using here was passed in 2011, the Procurement Act. The regulations we are using in 2020. What prompted the act? Because I want to believe my job description, it's the regulation itself. I'm guided by that. So it starts with even when I'm in an interview. Sometimes the questions that are posed by the interviewers, I'm saying, okay, they don't understand public procurement. Two, it goes to the job description. I can simply say they don't understand again public procurement. It goes to your performance, your KPIs. You can tell again they don't understand public procurement. So my question is that, here I am in an organization that doesn't understand why I am here. And now I have two competing things. You have been referring here to the organizational strategy. Most of the time when they talk about an organization strategy, let us not lie about triple bottom lines. There's only one bottom line. They want to make money. So what do they expect from you? Cost savings. We're not here for that. Because cost saving is not even sustainable. So the expectation is that, which I heard here, which I understand, they would say, okay, you had a budget of 500 million. You procured, okay, your procurement implementation, let us say you was 100%. That means everything that was in the procurement plan and what was budgeted for was bought, was procured. Then they would say, now, cost savings. At that simplistic level, they would expect that you spend less. My question is, how could I spend less when even the procurement plan and the budget itself was informed My understanding, once you spend less, it means you didn't properly budget. Your budget was not informed by a proper analysis of the market outside. I should spend everything that was there. And I'm not, if I make a saving, it means if I said I am going to buy a chair, the chair should be 5 emalangeni that was reserved for the chair. If then the chair, I buy it for 3 emalangeni, then there's something wrong. It didn't properly budget. No. Okay, may I finish?
Okay, thank you very much.
No.
Thank you very much.
I haven't finished the question. May I? No. Not the concern is that I find that there is here opposing forces. Two opposing forces. I am expected to. I cannot just follow the strategy of the company as it is if I feel like one, either our processes are against the spirit of fairness, of maximum competition, if they are against what the Procurement Act was meant for, then surely let me not fit in that organization. But let me, because today we are in public, I am a representative first of the public out there. If you are going to tell me SMS are not
Okay,
SMEs
let's
are not
summarize.
doing well.
Let's
Yes.
summarize.
Okay, there's a lot I want to say, but
Evidently.
okay.
Yeah, because I'm worried we are missing your question. At this point, did you want to try? Okay, I think the two gentlemen want to attempt to respond.
You first of all, you ask a very valuable question. But for me, it's two things. One, it goes to how deep your understanding of procurement is. And number two, it goes to, we need to stop asking, what is the act preventing me from doing? And understanding what the act is enabling you to do, right? Because the act isn't preventing you from being efficient. There may be one or two sections that make your job difficult in being efficient. But if an act has 400 sections or 80 sections, there are 78 enabling sections that help you do a good job. So just on cost saving, for example, if you and your internal team go out to market and decide you want to build a school, what you do is you'll request for budgetary quotes. You'll get those budgetary quotes, and you'll put those into the budget for the next year, right? How you save cost in the next financial year is instead of issuing that as an ITT packaged to one company, you can have a more innovative approach, and your act does allow you to do this. Invite your potential service providers to the table. Say, hey guys, we had packaged this as one service delivery project. Are there other ways we can do this? What you will find, and I'll give you a personal example that we went through, is there's a supplier who's going to say to you, the way your engineers have packaged it makes it expensive. There are more strategic and innovative ways you can do it.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to speak around what he has said, to say, as procurement professionals, we must be innovative. We must provide solutions to the business. Even if we're doing public procurement, the Act has a lot of things that we can use in order for us to be innovative and deliver value for the organization. And in terms of cost savings, like I'm saying, that is the value that we are hired to add. If I have budgeted for 500 million, it does not mean that I have to spend the 500 million. As long as I have delivered on what was required, whether the budget is 3 million or what, I have made that particular, say, whatever deliverable that was expected of me. So for us is that we must move out of our shell and be creative enough to provide solutions to the business that we are serving and solutions to our customers, which is the internal customers. All the time when we are sitting, we must always think outside of the box. Sometimes we must think even without the box, because when we have the box, even if it's outside, you'll still be limited around that. But we must just think without the box and see what best value can we deliver to the business.
Thank you very much. I think we have run out of time for this particular session, but I do want to highlight the fact that I think the gentleman also complained around how there is no understanding of even the job profiles, of even the KPIs. And I think coming from human capital, I do want to stress the point that says, let your voice be heard, because we may come as organizational development, including design specialists, but we don't know your process flows. When we define the process flow and the value chain of procurement, we bring in the procurement people and we say, tell us, what is it that you do? And then from those process flows, we then define the job profile. And we don't do it independently as HR. We do it together with the procurement professionals. They tell us that this is the job profile because this is our value chain, or these are our process flows. From those, we then define key performance indicators, the KPIs. You are the ones that, because at the organizational level, we will define, the strategy. But then it is up to you to say, this is what we are contributing, to the strategy. So I think it's important that we find our voice. Whether we're mapping processes, make sure you speak if you are in that room to say, this is how we deliver value to the business. And then I think, Ronald, it will resonate with me as we leave here, that let's move from looking at ourselves as individuals, but let's look at the profession. I think I am taking that with me, because even in human capital, we do talk about talent being important, talent being the individual. And I think there's a study that was done that says for all winning organizations, they make an example of sports to say how many % of the time is the guy that wins the golden boot in the team that will win the World Cup. So it's good that you have your Mercy, I'm not sure what team he plays for, to win the golden boot. But if the organization is not winning, if the team is not winning the World Cup, then we are not really winning as an organization. So I think you're underscoring the fact that it needs to be a movement. It's a professional movement, and you need to disrupt your institutions. And you do that by showing up in excellence. You do that by the white papers that we're talking about. Let's hear you simplify, for your excos, the value that you bring. I think having said that, and in full appreciation, because of my old age, I do want to read a story here as we get off the stage. They say you can tell someone's age, or you can tell that someone is over 40 when they start talking in stories. Yesterday we were at the lunch and Mr. Matsebula started telling us a story. And in my mind, I'm like, dude, you're over 40. So it's really a quick story. And fully appreciating Ronald's position. I think it's also important that we also go out of here saying that we want to be better people as we work to move into the C-suite, and we do want to represent, I think, the profession in an excellent manner. So the story goes, so there's Ezra and Thomas in the story, and they joined the company. And I'm sorry if you know the story, old age, I always tell the story to my team. So Ezra and Thomas join a company together a few months after they graduate from the university. And after a few years of work, their manager promotes Ezra to a position of senior sales manager. So let's pretend that he's promoted. Well, it's still a high position, really, a senior sales manager. But Thomas remains in his entry-level junior sales officer position. So Thomas develops a sense of jealousy and disgruntlement. I mean, dude, we joined the organization together, and I'm also really a hardworking person, but he continues to work anyway. And then one day, Thomas feels that he can't work with Ezra anymore. So he writes his resignation letter, but before he submits it to the manager, he complains that management does not value me. I am not heard. I'm not given an opportunity, to be heard. So he's complaining, and that is why he's submitting his resignation. And the manager knew that, Ezra, is good with compliance. He does work very hard, and he's really spent a good amount of time with the organization. And perhaps sometimes he even works harder, than Thomas, and therefore perhaps he did deserve a promotion. So in order to help Thomas realize, that of why he did not perhaps get the promotion, he says, please go, he gives him an assignment, go out and find if anyone is selling watermelons in town. So Thomas returned and said, well, yes, there is someone selling watermelons. The manager asks, so how much are they per kg? Thomas drives back to town to ask, and then he returns and informs the manager, oh, they are 13 emalangeni, 50 cents per kg sliced. The manager told Thomas, you know what, I'm going to give Ezra the same task that I gave you. Please pay close attention to his response. So the manager sends out Ezra, go and find if anyone is selling watermelons. As Ezra went out, he comes back. He says, manager, there's only one person selling watermelons in the whole town. The cost is 49 emalangeni each watermelon, and it is 32 emalangeni 50 cents for half a melon. He is selling them at 30 emalangeni 50 cents per kg when sliced. He has in his stock 93 melons, one each weighing 7 kilograms. He has a farm, and he can supply us with melons for the next 4 months at a rate of 102 melons per day at 27 emalangeni per melon. This includes delivery. The melons appear fresh and red with good quality, and they taste better than the ones we sold last year. He has his own slicing machine and is willing to slice for us for free. We need to strike a deal with him before 10 a.m. tomorrow, and we will be sure of beating last year's profits in melons by 223,000 emalangeni. This will contribute positively to our overall performance, as it will add a minimum of 3.78 to our current overall sales target. I have put this information down in writing, and it is available on a spreadsheet. Please let me know if you need it so that I send it to you in 15 minutes. The differentiator. So as we go out and chase moving into the C-suite, let's remember the story, but also let's remember Ronald's message that we are a force if we are a collective than individuals. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Anginivo. Basi-stretcheni. Asi-stretcheni.
When you know that, hey, I trust someone.